You believe that freedom is being able to leave whenever you want. I believe that too. When I arrived at that farm, no one stopped me from leaving. That was the first mistake I didn't notice. You arrive at a new place. Everything seems simple. No pressure. Without explicit rules. Without anyone watching you directly. That's exactly how it was. After years in the orphanage, the farm seemed silent. Open space, clean air, a peaceful routine. Nobody was shouting. Nobody demanded it. Nobody was in control. At least, not visibly. The people there were kind. Not excessively, not false, just consistent. They smiled enough. They spoke only what was necessary. They never asked too many questions. And that, at first, seemed like respect. Have you ever been to a place like this? Where no one invades your space. Where everything seems too calm for things to go wrong. And that's exactly why you don't question it. You accept. The problem was never what was happening. That was what wasn't there. Nobody complained. No one disagreed. Nobody seemed to want anything different. And you don't realize that on the first day. Not even in the first week. Because at first, it seems peaceful. But it isn't. It is the absence of resistance. And there is a difference. You've been trained to recognize control when it's visible. Direct orders, written rules, clear punishments. But there, none of that existed. And that's exactly why it worked. Because the system didn't need to force you. He just needed to mold you. On the first day, nobody told you what to do. But you noticed. He saw when they woke up, how they worked, when they stopped. And without realizing it, you imitated. Not because they told you to, but because it seemed natural. By the second day, you already knew where to be. By the third, you weren't thinking about it anymore. And that seems like adaptation. But it isn't. It's alignment. There is a type of control that does not depend on authority. It depends on the standard. When everyone around you is doing the same thing, doing the right thing ceases to be a choice. Turn the pattern around. And questioning the norm requires energy. More energy than most people are willing to expend. So you don't question it. You fit in. Because fitting in is easier than resisting. And the farm knew it. Or rather, it was built like this. You start noticing little things. Nothing obvious. Just strange enough not to be ignored. Nobody talked about leaving. Not as a taboo. It simply wasn't an issue. You ask once, in a light-hearted way. Has anyone left here yet? They respond. But they don't really answer. Some already have. And they change the subject. There is no curiosity. There is no interest. Just a detour. And you feel it. But ignore it. Because it doesn't seem important. Yet, with time, you notice something else. Nobody seems to be in a hurry. But nobody stops. They work. They rest. They eat. They are sleeping. Everything in its own time. Always. No delays. No variations. Flawless. And that's not normal. But it seems to be. Because everyone does the same thing. And when everyone does the same thing, the stranger becomes invisible. The control there didn't come from any one person. It came from the environment. You weren't obligated to. But I didn't see an alternative either. And this creates a very specific illusion. Freedom without choice. You can do anything, as long as that's what everyone else does. And the most dangerous thing about it, it's that you start wanting to do the same thing, because resisting isolates you, and insulation is expensive, even when no one is threatening you. There was a specific moment, small, almost irrelevant. You decided to do something different. Nothing extreme, just out of the ordinary. Wake up later. Nobody said anything. But when you left, everyone was already working. And they looked. No direct judgment, no failing grades. But they realized. And that was enough. Because at that moment, you felt something strange. No blame. Not fear, but displacement. It's as if you're out of sync, outside the system. And that bothers people more than any rule. This is where you start to understand. Not entirely, but enough to feel. The farm doesn't hold you back. It adjusts to you. And the more you adjust, you have less desire to go out. And when that desire disappears, you stop noticing that you've lost something. And it was at that point, that's when I started paying real attention, because I still wanted to go out. And that, I was already becoming different. You don't realize it right away, but there is an invisible line in that place. And the moment you start thinking about leaving, you cross that line. Nothing changes externally. No one will confront you. No one can stop you. But something changes in the way they look at you, in the way they respond, in the way that they don't respond. And it's subtle enough to seem like something you've made up in your head. You decide to test it. Nothing dramatic. Just leave. You don't advertise. He doesn't ask for permission. It only starts to walk. And nobody can stop you. That's the point. No one can stop you. Because the system doesn't work with blocking. It works with a return. At first it seems easy. You walk. The path is open, but something starts to happen. Slowly. You think, what if I'm exaggerating? What if it's nothing serious? What if I'm being ungrateful? These thoughts don't come from nowhere. They were built. Days, weeks, perhaps months. Small adjustments in the way you see the place, in the way you see yourself. The system doesn't prevent you from leaving. It makes you question your own decision to leave. And that's more efficient, because when someone stops you, you resist, but when you doubt yourself, you'll be back. Without anyone giving orders, you start to remember the good things. Silence, the routine, predictability. Do you remember what it was like before? Chaos, uncertainty, lack of control. And suddenly, the farm doesn't look like a prison. It seems safe. And that's what makes you stop. You slow down your pace. Not because someone ordered it, but because something inside you hesitated. And at that moment, you realize something far worse than any rule. You no longer know if you want to leave. Then you come back, without resistance, no conflict. And nobody comments. Nobody asks where you went. Nobody says, I told you so, because it's not necessary. They know it works. After that, something changes, not on the farm, in you. The idea of leaving is weakening. It doesn't disappear, but it loses strength. And every time you think about it, she seems more distant, less necessary. This is where you begin to understand the true level of the system. It's not about preventing physical movement. It's about eliminating the desire to move. Because freedom isn't about going out. It's wanting to leave. And when that desire disappears, you can be completely free, and yet never leave. You start to look at others differently. And he understands. They are not in prison. They just don't try. And that doesn't seem strange to them, because they've already gone through the same process. They thought about leaving. They questioned it. They tried. And they returned. You begin to see the complete pattern. Everyone who arrives finds it strange. Everyone who stays adapts. Everyone who thinks about leaving hesitates. And everyone who hesitates stays. Not because he wants to, but because he stopped wanting the opposite. And now you're at that point. Between two states. You can still see the system. But she's already starting to feel its effect. You still think differently, but he starts acting the same way. And this creates a tension that is difficult to sustain, because thinking differently requires energy, and the system is designed to wear that down. You notice something else. The farm doesn't need to convince you every day. She just needs to tire you out gradually. Repetition, routine, predictability. This reduces your resistance, until questioning becomes more difficult than accepting. There is an exact moment where you can completely lose the desire to go out, not in a dramatic way, but silent. You wake up, and simply, she doesn't think about it anymore. And when that happens, you don't feel like you've lost your freedom. You feel you have found peace. And that's the most dangerous point of all. Because when you stop wanting to go out, you stop noticing that you're getting older. And when staying becomes automatic, you are no longer choosing. You are functioning. And that's exactly where it happened. I realized something that no one else there seemed to notice anymore. They weren't living on the farm. They were being held captive by her. And the difference between these two things, it changes everything. You begin to see every detail differently. It's not about routine anymore. It's about repetition. It's no longer about calm. It's about the absence of friction. It's no longer about choice. It's about not needing to choose. And that's the end of the system. Because when you remove the need to decide, you remove the possibility of leaving. Now everything makes sense. No one can hold you back, because it's not necessary. No one can force you, because it doesn't work in the long run. Nobody is watching you, because you start to adjust on your own. Control does not come from the outside. It settles inside you. And once that happens, you don't need rules anymore. You become the rule. And this is where the real cost lies. It's not the right time. It's not the job. It's not even the fact that you're staying. It is the silent disappearance of the alternative. Because in the beginning, you had options, even if they weren't good, even if they were difficult. But they did exist, and now, you don't miss them anymore. And when you don't miss it, you stop realizing that you've lost. The farm doesn't look like a prison. It seems like a mature choice. Something like, I could leave if I wanted to. But it's better here. It makes sense to stay. And that sounds rational. But it isn't. Because this decision did not come from a real comparison. He came from an environment that reduced his ability to compare. There is a difference between choosing to stay and I can no longer imagine leaving. And most of the people there, I had already crossed that line without realizing it. Not yet. And that's what puts you in an awkward position, because now you see. But seeing doesn't automatically set you free. In truth, it makes everything more difficult, because you understand the system, but she still feels its effects. You start to wonder, if it's so subtle, is it really a problem? If no one is suffering, does it even matter? If everything works, why leave? And these are the most dangerous questions, because they don't come from you. They come from the system, operating within you. Not all control looks like oppression. Some seem like comfort. Some seem stable. Some seem peaceful. And that's exactly why they work so well. You realize there's only one way out. It's not physics. It's mental. You need to want to leave before you try to leave, because if that desire disappears, there is no way out anymore, even if the path is open. And then you understand. It's not about running. It's about not adapting completely. Because the moment when you fit perfectly, it's the moment when you get lost. The problem was never the farm. She only did what she was built to do. The problem? The problem is that you confuse the absence of pain with freedom. And when did he notice the difference? I was already too comfortable to react. Because it's not the end. No one needs to hold you back when you learn not to leave.